Hi everyone, my name is Ben Spies-Butcher. I am one of the local organising committee here for BN 2022. I'm an academic at Macquarie University in Sydney and also one of the co-directors of the Australian Basic Income Lab. And it is a great pleasure to be able to chair this session today on modelling basic income. So we have a very slight change to the order. We're going to kick off with Max Ghenis's paper on blank slate UBI. That's a recorded presentation, so I'm going to play that, and then we're going to return to the order, starting with Gunmin straight after that. So I'll now play the first presentation.
Okay, thank you. My name is Nicola Woodruff and I'm the UK Research Director at the UBI Centre, and I'm presenting this report on behalf of my colleagues Max Ghenis and Patrick Malik. I'm speaking ahead of time at the BN Conference 2022, talking about a blank slate UBI idea for the United States. So essentially, what if we replaced the very, very complex federal income and payroll tax system and most means assisted benefits and instituted a flat tax and a very substantial UBI in their place. And you can view these slides as I go through them at blankslateus.ubicentre.org. So just a brief bit of information about us, the UBI Centre. Our mission is to make UBI the most thoroughly researched economic policy. So applying micro simulation or looking into policy details to figure out the positives and negatives of different UBI policies as they're proposed. So most of our work is in the UK and the US. And just a brief overview of where this presentation is planning to go. I'll start off with just a look at what the tax benefit system is at the moment, before talking about what we mean by the blank slate UBI. And then I'll just go into a bit more detail about how we actually decided on the UBI levels to set, because we used an optimization algorithm to do that, before going on to the actual impacts that we found when we ran through our micro simulation model. And then I'll just close off with some discussion about the results, which were expected, which maybe not, as well as what we can take away from it. So, the current tax benefit system, if you're a taxpayer in the US, is pretty much captured by this chart on the right. So this is telling us, depending on your income and depending on the number of children you have, what your marginal tax rate is. So for those of you who aren't familiar with marginal tax rates, it's essentially a measure of how easy it is for you to increase your disposable income by increasing your employment income. So for example, if your marginal tax rate is 50%, that means that if you earn an extra $1, then the state is going to essentially take away 50 cents from you. Maybe your benefits are falling by 50 cents, or maybe your taxes are rising by 50 cents. But either way, you're not seeing that. And then it goes the other way. If you have a marginal tax rate of negative 50%, then that means that if you earn an extra $1, the state is going to give you an extra 50 cents on top of that. Maybe your taxes phase in with that extra earned income. But of course, as you see here, the main thing here is that this is a very, very complex chart. It's pretty unpredictable. If you were trying to figure out what your actual net marginal wage is from your earnings, you'd have a pretty tricky time, and this is because this is the result of many, many different tax credits and benefits that phase in and out, often at the same time. And you've got many places in this chart where marginal tax rates are over 50%, which is pretty high. And of course, this isn't even considering the fact that you've got marginal tax rates that approach infinity. And we call these welfare cliffs. So you see these spikes on the chart here at different points depending on how many children you have. Those are places where a small extra hourly pay rise, for example, is going to push you over a cliff that means you lose thousands of dollars of benefits because of eligibility limits and things like that. So these types of cliffs and high marginal tax rates make it pretty hard for people to increase their disposable incomes or just financially plan, because these things need to be sort of extrapolated and estimated with considerable detail, and they're the result of pretty complex policies. So what would it look like if we essentially replaced a lot of the complexity here with a much, much simpler system? So what we're talking about here is this blank slate vision, where essentially we take income and payroll tax at the federal level and just replace them with a 40% flat tax on adjusted gross income. We're keeping state income tax and affordable care act subsidies. State income tax because we're just looking at a federal reform here, and ACA subsidies because we're not touching Medicaid, and ACA subsidies kind of are pretty aligned to Medicaid. There's a point where you jump from one to the other, and it wouldn't really make sense to get rid of one and not the other. So the other side of this is benefits, and we get rid of most means tested benefits. So SNAP and SSI are by far the biggest here, but you've also got WIC, TANF and housing subsidies. And SNAP, the only qualifier here is that we're assuming that we've moved off the emergency allotments that were enacted during the pandemic. The main reason for this is because they're quite abnormal and they're temporary provisions. So essentially they mean that instead of having a phase out, you just get the full allotment until you would have no longer qualified under the original rules, at which point you lose everything. So that's a pretty big change from the usual rules, and we will go back to the usual rules. So that's why we're essentially assuming that we have done this simulation. So we get a lot of extra budgetary surplus from repealing all these benefits and instituting this flat tax. And that gives us a lot of room to set high UBI amounts and still achieve budget neutrality. But the question still remains as what exact UBI levels to pick. And that's where we went for an optimization approach. So essentially what we need to do here is pick 5 numbers that we assign to each age group: young children, older children, young adults, rest of the adults and senior citizens. And we need to satisfy budget neutrality, but also we have a goal that we want to reach. We want to minimize mean percentage loss. And what we mean by mean percentage loss is the average percentage of your income that you lose out from this reform, or 0 if you gain. And this is essentially the measure that we've picked in order to proxy for this option. If lots of people are losing a large percentage of their income, that's pretty bad, and that's pretty disruptive towards the general population. So minimizing this means that we get as far away as possible from that. And the advantage of this metric is that it does prioritize low-income households more than high-income households. If you take $1 from a low-income household, that's going to be of more mean percentage loss than it is if you took the same amount from a high-income household. So once we run this through the algorithm, we end up with the amounts you see on the right. So adults see the highest amount, and children see the lowest amount. So we're running this through Policy Engine, which is a free open source web app that anyone can use. And so you can actually run the simulation that we've run on your own variation of this policy, or reproduce our own findings, as well as see the impact on your own household. And if you do that, you'll see these kinds of results. So overall, it's very, very progressive. The bottom decile sees an increase on average to its income of about 60%, which is pretty massive. And all deciles below the 7th actually see an increase on average in their disposable incomes. Of course, though, as with most of these charts, doesn't mean that every one of these green deciles is all perfectly happy and better off. You get some mixed outcomes. But generally, the chance of coming out ahead is very, very high if you're in these low-income deciles. It's around 90% for the bottom decile, and it decreases pretty rapidly as you move up the income deciles. And 60% roughly of people come out ahead. If instead we look at age rather than income, we see a slightly different picture. We see that for the elderly and the very young, you have the best outcomes. You're very likely to come out ahead, but as you move towards middle age, you're actually most likely to come out behind. And this broadly reflects the fact that in your middle age, you're going to be earning the most income that you will earn throughout your life. And if we then move on to impacts by state, we see what we'd largely expect, which is that poorer states benefit and richer states lose out. So we're talking Mississippi, West Virginia, compared to Maryland and Massachusetts. And so this is largely just a reflection of how much income states have in the first place. But of course, one of the most key concerns for UBI policies that affect large numbers of people on existing benefits is the safety of the recipients on those benefits. And we see that most people on each of these benefits that we're getting rid of come out ahead. Supplemental security income is the one with the lowest win rate, and there's a few likely reasons for this. The biggest one being that a lot of people in SSI also have social security, and social security has a portion of it in the current system which is tax exempt, but as we're moving to a flat tax, we're getting rid of that, and we're taxing that at a much higher rate than they used to. But if we move on to poverty, we see some pretty strongly positive results. Almost every definition of poverty that you can think of comes out with over half reduction. So the poverty rate, the deep poverty rate, which is the percentage of people who are below half the poverty line, those both fall by 50% or 80%. And then if you even look at the poverty gap, which is a lot harder to game, because a lot of the time you can see policies which try to shift people from very slightly below the poverty line to very slightly above, and it's fairly easy to do that from a policy standpoint. You can't really do the same thing with the poverty gap, which just measures the total financial gap between people in poverty and their poverty lines. And so that falls from 130 billion to 55 billion, and the deep poverty gap falls by over 80% as well. So all of these different metrics are all coming out very, very strongly down in this reform simulation. And if we look at inequality, we see a similar picture. The Gini index of income inequality, that falls by 15%, and the shares of income held by the top 10% and the top 1% also fall by about 10%. But if we move away from the country as a whole and we start to look at individual households, then we see some stable results. So this will vary by household hugely, but for example, for a married couple with one child, you'll see that they're almost always better off until they reach $100,000 in employment income, at which point they're behind. Of course, some cliffs that exist in the baseline still exist after this because we haven't repealed the premium tax credit, and that has a period where you drop off it and lose your affordable care app subsidy. And if we look at the marginal tax rate associated with this, then we see that it's a lot simpler now. You've still got those parts of the marginal tax rate that were because of state income taxes or premium tax credit results, but overall it's a lot more uniform. It's always going to be between 35 and roughly 60%. It's a lot easier to predict your marginal tax rate from your earnings. So, closing out, I guess the key takeaways here are that if we're wanting to help design policies that maximise the metrics that we're after, then there are plenty of machine learning targets that we can use. There are plenty of really powerful tools that can be really effective at meeting those outcomes. And then the other part of this is on the objective at trying to minimise the number of people who come up behind, especially in the lower income deciles. So a lot of the time you see conditions for policies where it has to have no one coming out behind. And really that can create a sort of trolley problem effect where a lot of people who would be ahead and need to be brought out of poverty, those people are going to be harder to raise out of poverty if you constrain yourself to only considering policies which don't leave anyone behind. So it's a very complex sort of moral dilemma here, but you've got this sort of dilemma existing. And then the other parts are that UBI schemes, as big as this one, you are going to need to raise broad-based taxes. You couldn't raise enough to make this budget neutral just with a progressive tax on high incomes. You're going to need to have a flat tax or at least a large increase to income tax rates as they are. And then also, although you are raising marginal tax rates with these tax rises, you'll actually cut marginal tax rates by a lot just by repealing these benefits. You have a lot of benefits with really high phase-out rates, and taking people off those and replacing them with UBI instead lowers and increases work incentives and the ability of people to increase their disposable incomes a lot just by taking away those benefits and replacing them with the UBI. And so finally, if you have better ideas or I'm sure that there are much more different ways of framing this blank slate UBI or alternative policies. Protestation.org is a free tool that anyone can use to see how this would affect their own household or try out different reforms and see if we can improve the results by changing any of the parameters involved. So with that, thank you for your time. If you have any questions, feel free to email them to me or my colleagues. And yeah, thank you. Anyone can use to see how this would affect their own household or try out different reforms and see if we can improve the results by changing any of the. So with that, thank you for your time. If you have any questions, feel free to me or my colleagues.
If you're not on mute, then your picture will start turning up as one of the ones we're looking at. Welcome back to the other people who have joined us as well. My name's Ben. I'm chairing the session. And that was, we slightly moved the paper around. So that was my colleagues, Slate UBI. And just noting that we also had how good it is to see the United States taking UBI so seriously in policy discussions and modelling discussions. It's really good. So we're now moving on to our next paper. We're now returning to the order of the program. So Gunmin is going to through a paper on a unified theory on the.
すみません、岡野さんの反映しきれてないです。
全然。
すみません、ちょっと。
Good.
ごめんなさい、いや、本当に申し訳ないです。
Video?
その子だけちょっと直しました。
I just ask people to keep themselves on mute. Otherwise, you will, as I say, you'll be picked up by the microphone. So if you can put yourself on mute, even if you're being quiet, it will pick you up.
本当ズームでやってほしいっすね、こういうの。使い慣れてるやつで。使い慣れないので、怖すぎて。
Are you there?
こっちで。
Do you want me slides or do you want to introduce them first?
Hi, my name is Gunmin E. I'm the second
見れるんだ。
day
そうですね。はい。
presentation file.
Play the presentation now.
I am Gunmin E. I am very happy to be with you all here. The title of my paper is Unified Theory on the Income Redistribution Effect of Basic Income. The contents are organized as follows. 1. Introduction. There are many empirical studies on the income redistribution effect of basic income. However, there are very few theoretical analytical studies on the income redistribution effect of basic income. However, these studies also have limitations in that they only revealed the characteristics of the UBI FIT model among the various financial models of basic income, namely the tax model including income tax, the common social wealth fund model, and the national shared equity rights model for corporations. This paper presents a unified theory on the income redistribution effect of basic income. It is based on dividing the basic income model into an internally funded basic income model in which finance is raised from individuals or households through taxes, and an externally funded basic income model in which finance is raised from outside individuals or households. Structure of the article. Section 2 discusses the income redistribution effect of the internally funded basic income model, mainly focusing on the UBI FIT model. Section 3 discusses the income redistribution effect of the externally funded basic income model. Section 4 presents a unified theory on the income redistribution effect of the internally funded basic income model and the externally funded basic income model. Section 5 shows the formulas related to the net benefit amount, net contribution amount, rate of net beneficiaries, and rate of net contributors in the three models of basic income. Section 6 concludes by suggesting the implications, limitations, and possible analytical applications of this study. Section 2, income redistribution effect of internally funded basic income model. The internally funded basic income model is divided into a basic income model paid by personal income tax and a basic income model paid by taxes other than income tax. Among the models of basic income funded by personal income tax, there are UBI FIT model, UBI RIT model, and UBI PIT model. The income redistribution effect of models of basic income financed by personal income tax can be judged based on the T% UBI FIT model, where there is no tax exemption point and basic income is equally distributed to all. Despite the detailed differences between the internally funded basic income models, they have the following commonalities. First, in the payment stage, the same amount of basic income is received, but in the taxation stage, the higher the income or consumption or wealth, the greater the tax, resulting in a progressive income redistribution effect. Second, the difference between gross cost and net cost inevitably occurs in that the net beneficiaries pay a certain amount of additional tax, although not as much as the amount of basic income, and on the contrary, the net contributors pay additional tax but receive the amount of basic income. It shows the issue of the fiscal illusion that inevitably occurs in the internally funded basic income model is very important in the debate over the cost of basic income, and that theoretical and practical interventions are essential to overcome it. When looking at a particular society as a whole, it is necessary to consider that the internally funded basic income model returns the entire amount equally to all individuals or households based on paying taxes according to their ability to pay only for basic income payment. Therefore, the internally funded basic income model is more clearly revealed than the externally funded basic income model in that it operates on income redistribution mechanism to reduce the level of income inequality. Section 3, income redistribution effect of externally funded basic income model. It is necessary to recognize that this model is an ideal type and that, although it is an ideal type, it is useful because it is different from the internally funded basic income model discussed above in terms of the mechanism of income redistribution effect. There are some examples: basic income payment through the issuance of sovereign money, a plan to provide the basic income from fund management profits by creating a common social wealth fund, measures to pay basic income by the state setting up shared equity rights for corporations, etc. In the case of payment of basic income through the creation of a common social wealth fund or the establishment of shared equity rights for corporations, it is assumed that the effect of the financing plan itself on income redistribution is negligible in that it places an additional economic burden on only a small number of people. It is sufficient to compare before payment and basic income and after payment of basic income. Let the amount of externally funded basic income be equivalent to S times the average income before payment of externally funded basic income, where S is larger than 0. If the basic income is paid using the fund management profit of the common social wealth fund, the income gap of each income class is unchanged in terms of the absolute amount of income, but it decreases in terms of the relative share of income. More specifically, the Gini coefficient decreases exactly S divided by 1 plus S multiplied by 100%. The proof is provided. Section 4, Unified Theory on the Income Redistribution Effect of Basic Income. It is useful to look at it in 2 stages. The first step examines the income redistribution effect of the internally funded basic income model. In the second stage, based on the analysis in the first stage, the income redistribution effect of basic income is analyzed when the externally funded basic income model is additionally considered. The first step, let the resulting Gini coefficient improvement rate be 8%, the rate of net beneficiaries be B%, and the net benefit amount be C. In this case, the net contribution amount is equal to the net benefit amount. The second step, in the externally funded basic income model, if the basic income payment is S times mu, where S is larger than 0, the overall Gini coefficient improvement rate is A plus 100 minus A multiplied by S divided by 1 plus S%. If the rate converted from the net contributors to the net beneficiaries is D%, the rate of net beneficiaries is B plus D%, and the net benefit amount is C plus the number of net beneficiaries when only internally funded basic income is applied, multiplied by the amount of externally funded basic income per person, plus the sum of the net benefit amounts of the additionally entered net beneficiaries due to the payment of externally funded basic income. Table 1 gives some examples of the improvement rate of the Gini coefficient due to the application of the internally funded basic income model and the externally funded basic income model. Section 5, formulas related to net benefit amount, net contribution amount, rate of net beneficiaries, and rate of net contributors in 3 models of basic income. There are 3 basic income models: internally funded basic income model, externally funded basic income model, and mixed model. The implications of the equations related to the 3 basic income models to us can be summarized as follows. First, in the internally funded basic income model, the sum of the net benefit amounts for net beneficiaries and the sum of the net contributors are the same. It is said that the model fits the top 20% versus bottom 80%, better than top 1% versus the bottom 99%. Second, in the externally funded basic income model, all members of society become net beneficiaries without distinction between net beneficiaries and net contributors. In the case of the externally funded basic income model, the stronger the policy intervention in sectors previously owned exclusively or enjoyed economic profits by a few, the more suitable the top 1% versus bottom 99% rather than the top 20% versus bottom 80%. However, at least for the moment, it seems that the potential size of the financial resources that can be secured through the internally funded basic income model is larger than the potential size of the financial resources that can be secured through the externally funded basic income model. In addition, the former is judged to be superior to the latter in terms of stability and predictability of the size of financial resources. Third, in the case of the mixed basic income model, it will depend on the specific composition of the internally funded basic income model and the externally funded basic income model, but the size of the rate of net beneficiaries will be highly dependent on the relative weight of the internally funded basic income model and the externally funded basic income model. The internally funded basic income model can outperform the externally funded basic income model, at least for now, in terms of financial stability and potential size of resources. On the other hand, the externally funded basic income model can be superior to the internally funded basic income model in terms of the size of the rate of net beneficiaries and the burden of contribution of the net contributors. In addition, in terms of labor supply, the internally funded basic income model has both a substitution effect and an income effect, whereas the externally funded basic income model has only an income effect, so the latter has an advantage over the former. Section 6, Conclusion and Policy Implications. First, implications. Based on an understanding of the relative strengths and weaknesses of the internally funded basic income model and the externally funded basic income model, and a political understanding of the preference and support for basic income, it is important to specifically arrange and construct a whole basic income model that guarantees political feasibility and sustainability. Second, limitations. In discussing the income redistribution effect of the internally funded basic income model and the externally funded basic income model, this paper has a limitation that only the direct effects of taxation and transfer are considered. It can be said that the discussion on the income redistribution effect of the internally funded basic income model and the externally funded basic income model, considering the labor supply effect and macroeconomic effect, required an empirical analysis rather than a theoretical analysis. Third, possible analytical applications. We can apply the income redistribution effect of the externally funded basic income model discussed in this paper to the case of the Alaska Permanent Fund Dividend, APFD. Although the APFD is not paid to all Alaskan residents, it is true that most of the residents are paid and the annual per capita payment is the same. Therefore, we can calculate the maximum improvement rate of APFD's Gini coefficient when the direct effect is considered by using the Alaskan average per capita income before APFD payments and the APFD's per capita payment data each year. There are various mechanisms that can produce indirect effect. A representative mechanism that will increase the income redistribution effect of APFD is that income inequality would have worsened if a small number of people had monopolized the profits of all development without the creation of the APFD. As a mechanism to reduce or even reverse the income redistribution effect of APFD, income inequality could be further reduced if the welfare system had been operated by targeting the socially disadvantaged, including the low-income class, instead of distributing the same amount to all residents with certain qualifications. In addition, if the decrease in labor supply due to APFD payments occurs especially among the low-income class, there may be a mechanism to exacerbate income inequality due to APFD payments. However, according to Johnson Marinescu 2022, it appears that this mechanism either did not work or, if they did, had only a negligible effect. If the synthetic control method used by Johnson Marinescu 2022 is applied to the analysis of income redistribution effect of APFD, it is possible to compose a synthetic Alaska and compare it with Alaska in terms of the Gini coefficient, and the result can be compared with the result considering only the direct effect of APFD payment. By doing so, we can comprehensively estimate the magnitude and direction of the income redistribution effect of APFD, the magnitude of the direct effect, and the overall magnitude and direction of the indirect effects. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. A reminder to everyone who's watching that in addition to the discussion, if you want to ask a question, please put it in the Q&A box. And then we'll be able to, I can read those out and pass them on. We do have a question that I think might have been come at the very end of the last presentation, but I think it might be equally useful here. So Gunmin, do you mind if I ask you that? The questioner is asking how strong UBI's presence is in mainstream political economy circles. So maybe from your perspective, how strong do you think this debate is?
I very well in this topic. Now, dream economists do interest.
In and out a little bit. I think Tomohiro, I think that might be that you're not on mute. If you could put yourself on mute, it'll just make it easier for the system to pick up who's now.
Can I start?
So, are you able to put yourself on mute?
Okay. Hello everyone. あれ時間しかもファイルが出てこない。だからずれてるからいいんじゃない？スライドが出てこない。
No, whether you might just put yourself on mute for a moment.
Would you like to wait?
ミュートになってます？
Yeah, are you on mute?
ミュートにはな。
Going to respond to the question first, and then we'll go to the next presentation.
私もう一回ファイルを。
今どうでしょう？
なんて言ってる？
I might just ask Gunmin, do you want to complete your answer that you were giving us before?
いや、とりあえず今ミュートにしてくださいって書いてありませんでした。
ミュート？ちょっと待って。 unmute とかじゃない。
For the technical issue here, we're just resolving that now. Gunmin E, are you still there? And did you want to complete the question you were partway through answering a moment ago?
I think that nowadays many mainstream economists interest in UBI, but most of them opposed to the UBI based on the analysis of general equilibrium model, but I think we should analyze the labor supply effect and macroeconomic effect of UBI, and I think we should concentrate on the efforts about the issues. Thank you.
Another call out, if you have a question, please put it in the Q&A box. And now I think that might be the end of those questions. We might come back and have questions for everybody at the end as well, if we have time. Given that, Abhiroop Sharma's slides are now up, I'm going to suggest we move to that paper. So this is the one on the program that's Universal Basic Income with Cardano blockchain. Am I able to hand over to you now? Abhiroop Sharma? You might need to take yourself off mute. We can't hear you just yet. So we're just working through a small technical difficulty, and we've got some wonderful assistants online to help us do that. And we're just going to wait another moment while we try and do that. I might suggest that, is it useful to maybe that we will move the order of the papers again, and we might see whether Tomohiro, are you available? Oh, no. I have a list of participants, so I can't see who is the person who's about to speak. So if you could just...
Hi. Am I audible now?
You are. So I'll just hand over to you and you can begin your presentation.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Abhiroop. I'm here to present an idea for a project that I've been working on, and I wanted to socialize. And I would, of course, like to thank the organizers for giving me the opportunity to present here. So one of the things that I've been working on for the last year or so has been the concept of a decentralized autonomous organization, which can allow us to essentially run a basic income program as a community. Essentially, what I have noticed is that many of the models and designs we have for implementation and execution of basic income uh, seem to lack uh, the community centric nature that is required for basic income to be successful over a long term, and to be able to create an organization which can essentially over time manage itself. So blockchains offer a very interesting proposition where they allow for organizations to exist as an entity on a system which is in theory live forever, right? And this gives us an opportunity to create the next generation of organizations which live on such technologies like blockchains, which allow us to create decentralized organizations which were not possible before. So when we talk about basic income and what it would take to really build a system which will survive the test of time, we have to really think about the initial starting conditions, the criteria we set for such an organization. In this regard, what you see here is an outline for an organization which has certain preset conditions that must be met when it's set up. First is that it needs to be decentralized by design. Now, centralization is good for certain activities, but not so good for other activities. And a community-centric approach where there is constant oversight and consensus from a community perspective gives us the ability to ensure that our decisions are not being made in a bubble and actions are not being taken unilaterally. The second point, which is very interesting, is the autonomous nature of such an organization. Now, an organization which essentially, quote unquote, lives on the blockchain needs to be able to automate its day to day processes. And with the advent of automation platforms, integration platforms, cloud services, it's now possible to have an extremely detailed automated system which is essentially running itself and allowing and reaching out to humans and community when it requires intervention, consensus, or decision making. The third criteria is that this is an organization for the community, which means that it's non-profit, two, it's open source, and three, it's owned by the community. So there is no central ownership of the organization itself. The fourth criteria we set is that of market making. Now, this is where it gets interesting. So, market makers control the revenue from transactions. So, an example of a market maker is a stock exchange. And when transactions occur on a stock exchange, the stock exchange itself earns a part of the revenue. By creating a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization for market making, what it allows us to do is tap into the inherent nature of market making in a DeFi decentralized finance space and then use those transactions to fund basic income. And this is the key, is that how do you fund basic income? And traditionally our approach has been to rely on either government like organizations or philanthropists to even conduct such experiments. But I believe it's possible for the community to essentially fund basic income by themselves by creating an organization which centers around bringing communities as well as transactions together and create income from the transaction fees created thereof. To give you an example, there are certain DeFi protocols which have over $1 billion in revenue. And this is also in what is still a very nascent industry. So there is certainly a lot of room to scale and a lot of room to grow. And this is where I think it gets very interesting as the industry grows, the blockchain industry grows, and DeFi, decentralized finance, gets more popular. It might be possible to completely fund basic income through transaction fees. And which means that in a sense, the community, all of us will, through our day-to-day interactions, just fund basic income through normal transactions. Now, the last 3 points here are also extremely important. I talked about nonprofit earlier. I think it's extremely important for such an organization to be by design nonprofit. Open source by choice, I think this is also an extremely important criteria for such an organization, as it ensures that it is transparent, it's not built on like a black box system. All its actual operations are up for scrutiny and there is nothing to hide, right? True transparency comes inbuilt when we ensure that the organization itself is open source. So the last point here is around Lego blocks. So collaboration is an extremely important element for any organization to survive, and especially for an organization with such a mandate. And this is where the organization must always look to collaborate with other similar organizations who have similar ideas and goals, and look to not reinvent the wheel. So this is sort of, I would say, that sets the stage for what a future state organization could look like, which may be in charge of a sovereign fund, which is community owned, governed by consensus of a community and not by an organization or a handful of people. So I'll stop there for a second. Are there any questions, or I'm happy to take questions in between as well, or I can keep going.
Reminder to put your questions in the Q&A box, then we can see them to be able to answer them. But I might, with that reminder, ask you to continue on and we'll come back to the questions as they come in.
So the main reason for a protocol to exist is to provide utility. And this is where it's important that any organization we build, which is based on the principle of providing utility and then using that utility to essentially fund basic income. So when we think about what blockchains are good for, we realize it's extremely good at certain things. One of those things is programmable money, right? It's the ability to program how money behaves in a much more intrinsic manner and with a lot more fidelity and control than you ever had with fiat currency. So this is where the first product and the first, I would say, feature for the protocol is an inflation-pegged currency. Now, classical currency like a US dollar depreciates over time just by doing nothing. And this means that by default, everyone is losing money unless they are putting their money into a system which is at least hedging inflation. This may be possible for some people, this may not be possible for others. Financial investments is a complex topic in itself, and with the advent of blockchains, we can now create some interesting paradigms which allow us to essentially solve some of these problems in a way which hasn't been done before. So the idea of an inflation-pegged currency is that if you imagine a currency which tracks not the value of the dollar, but the value of the dollar plus the inflation that has been occurring since the tracking of inflation for that token. So over time, it is supposed to keep reflecting the approximate inflation that occurs in a given based on the data provided, and that's where data is important. And based on the data provided, at least be able to approximately track inflation over a period of time. The advantages of such a currency is I would say from a employer-employee perspective, I think it's a very interesting proposition to earn your salary in an inflation-pegged token instead of flat fiat currency. Is that the inflation-pegged token then in a year when you are negotiating with your employer, you are not negotiating about the rise of goods and services, rather you are negotiating about the value you bring. And this opens up a lot more possibility of interactions between people over longer periods of time, which do not require you to actively invest. You just have to hold the currency in your wallet and it would automatically track inflation. The other core point of this protocol is to be governed by the community, and the entire organization is envisioned to be owned and operated by the community. The hope is with this product and future products of similar nature, we will be able to generate significant revenue over a period of time to be able to provide meaningful basic income without requiring any help or assistance, I would say, from philanthropic organizations. So the next part, the next core feature of the protocol is the mobile wallet. So we saw the core feature side, which was the token. Now, how does all of this tie together? This ties together with an app that we will build that will allow you to essentially be able to receive basic income, be your Web3 wallet, which will support multiple chains, hold your identity information as well, decentralized identity information. And the interesting thing is this can also be used for participating in governance and consensus. Over some period of time, it should be possible to, once we have sufficient, I would say, scale, is to tie up with grocery stores and enable cashless purchase directly from your mobile wallet to allow you to purchase goods and services directly with the basic income. The net effect where it leads to and where it all ties in is that this allows us to gather anonymized inflation data directly from the source and use and share this inflation data not only with our other side of the protocol, which would be the token, but also with other parties interested in independent inflation information. So this is a high-level overview of the project. It's currently seeking funding for phase initial implementation. I'm reaching out to communities and looking to form partnerships. If you are interested, please let me know. We will look to grow the community only after we have funding. So I'm focused on securing funding first. And I feel like there's an opportunity now with the technology we have to create a cohesive basic income protocol, which can act as a scaffolding for other communities to experiment with basic income, where they own their own data, they own their own identity, and they don't lose anything by trying to claim basic income. I'll stop there. I have a decent amount of experience on the tech side. I'm happy to connect. Feel free to reach out. If there are any questions, I would be happy to answer. So I see a question. Are you thinking of a crypto coin or bit? I would say it's a crypto coin, if that's the way you're describing it. Yes. As the financial corporate giants are somehow pushing cashless society via... Yeah, I mean, I think we are already in a cashless society, whether we like it or not. I think we have to accept that. I think the key is that we should be able to control money and not let centralized actors take hold of the most important tool we have now for sharing wealth and information and caring about each other.
Thank you so much for that presentation and for the responses there as well. It sounds like a really exciting project. Can I ask a quick question before we just move on? Which is how do you manage the exchange rate? So I can see how you can calculate it, but how do you ensure the token maintains that hedge with inflation over time?
So how we do it is we do it through a variable collateral ratio. And this is actually something which is already live on a blockchain. So it's not a new concept. Essentially, you tweak your collateral ratio over time to ensure that you are tracking inflation and you are not sitting on the treasury, on the collateral. You are actively investing and getting a return on the collateral to keep matching the inflation. Of course, right, it's not a perfect system, but I think even an imperfect system is better than no system.
Thank you. No, that's very helpful. And thank you for the presentation. I'm just going to share the slides of our next speaker now, and just to see, Tomohiro, are you already logged into the system and able to present? I think we might have had you there before. So I'm just seeing that you're not logged in at the moment. So I'm not sure exactly what we can do about that if he's not here able to present now. Yes, I don't have his email details or contacts to hand, unfortunately. So I do have details to assist with logging in, but unfortunately, I'm not able to contact him to be able to do that. So while we're doing that, if there are any other questions for our previous speakers, please pop them in the Q&A, and we're able to do that. I'll also try and contact Tomohiro now and see whether we're able to do that. I did find it interesting that across the three presentations, we moved from one that was focused, primarily on an income tax model to a theoretical approach that tries to combine different sorts of models to one that was effectively an externally funded model, funded through the transaction costs. So I'm just going to send this off. So I might just return to our last speaker and just ask a quick question. Another one, which is how are you going so far with being able to find some financial support? Have you had any success?
That's a very good question. So I'm currently in a funding round at something called Project Catalyst, which is a decentralized funding platform where anyone can submit proposals and community votes and it gets funded. Other than that, now I've started reaching out to larger communities outside to look for avenues for funding. I don't think there is too much cost involved in building the MVP. I think it can be built extremely cost effectively, and the engineering side of it is relatively simple. But yeah, I'm in the in the process of looking for funding.
It's a very tricky task, isn't it, to be able to do that sort of thing? And I might also return to Gunmin as well. And just, it's a very comprehensive approach that you've provided to thinking about basic income and its distributional impacts. I was wondering what next steps you were thinking of in terms of applying the model that you've developed.
Thank you very much for your question. I am planning. I am planning to analyze the Alaska permanent fund dividend case. I wanna analyze the Alaska APFD's income redistribution effect in terms of my my model externally, especially in the externally funded model. Even though the mechanisms in various indirect effects, each effect cannot identify, but I think the overall magnitude and direction of indirect effects are
calculated or influenced. And my next research plan would be this. Thank you.
Very much. Look forward to hearing the results of that next step. I think it'd be particularly helpful to have different ways of thinking through these externally funded models, including the model that we've also heard about using the transaction costs of a community currency. We have a lot more research on income tax funded models and even consumption tax funded models as well. I've sent a couple of emails through to our next presenter, but Selma, I don't think he's come online as yet. So I might instead just see if there are any final questions for our other participants, our other presenters, before we might and have a broader discussion, and then we might just finish a little bit early. So are there any final questions or any final comments from either of our presenters who are online?
I would just like to say thank you for the opportunity to present questions for our other participants.
で、あれだ。
はい、でも皆さん
And have a broader discussion.
And now,
Finish a little bit early.
Tomohiro, am I able to ask you to present?
資料がないな。資料がない。
いや資料は彼らが持ってると思います。
うんですよね。ちょっと待って。あ、こっちに。
just like to say thank you for the opportunity to present
Able to present your slides now? Them on, so you.
もういいよ、とにかく入っちゃって。あ、出た。入りました。もう入っちゃおう。
なんか出ました？出
はい、画面も出ました。
はい、出ましたよ。OK。はい。
And hear you. So if you are able to begin your presentation, I can also flip through your slides for you if that's easier.
Hello. Can I start?
Please do.
ミュートしてんの？してないわ。
Can I start?
音が出ないな。
Yes.
こっちが悪いのか。ちょっと待って。音声。音声出てるよ。向こうの
音聞きましょう。
Can I start?
出てますよ。
じゃあもうやっちゃいましょうか。行ってみましょう。
あれ、画面が小さくてついてるね。あれ、画面に大きくならないのこれ。こっち側って。
Can you hear me? Are you able to start now?
Yeah. Hello everyone. I'm sorry.
OK。
This is a report on a basic income experiment conducted in Japan. Sorry, wait.
画面がちっちゃくて見えないんだよね。
And the experiment is named as Maida New Year's Gift Social Experiment 2020. Japanese entrepreneur Mr. Yusaku Maezawa, who is well known in Japan as a billionaire, he announced a cash benefit project for New Year's Day 2020. He is so rich that he could afford to become the first Japanese space traveler. The experiment period was for 1 year, from April 2020 to March 2021. The benefit amount is 1 million yen per person, which is equivalent to $7,000. Total 1,000 persons got paid, and 78,000 persons without paid were recruited to compare. The purpose of the experiment is to see the impact of cash transfers on people's well-being, health, status, behavior, and so on. Here is the background of the experiment. Mr. Maezawa had a successful career with a company that operates an e-commerce site, and he awarded 1 million yen to 100 persons drawn from those who retweeted his post on Twitter in January 2019. And he announced that he would award 1 million yen to 1,000 persons drawn from those who retweeted his post in Twitter in January 2020. He decided to make this benefit a basic income experiment and set up a research group. And then I participated. What are Mr. Maezawa's aims? Sorry, wait. いや、ちょっと待ってください。He received reports from people who received benefits in 2019 that their lives were turned around with 1 million yen. He wondered if there are many people who want to study or challenge themselves, but are unable to take that first step due to lack of money. He wanted to quantitatively confirm whether the 1 million yen cash transfer would have the effect of turning their lives around. In particular, he is interested in whether cash transfers have the effect of increasing productivity. He hopes that the result of this experiment can be used as a reference material for basic income, government subsidies, and so on. どっか行っちゃったんだよね。わかった。Examinees are first divided into two main groups. Group with benefits and a group without benefits. The group with benefits was further divided in 3 groups. One that received a ransom of 1 million yen in April 2020. One that received the ransom in October 2020, and one received 80,000 yen per month over 12 months. The group without benefits consists of 78,000 people recruited separately through Ghenis, which is a news application. We intended a randomized controlled experiment, but it is not entirely so. As members of the companion, as members of the group without benefits were not from retweeted. Now we split the benefit into ransom and instruments, and we wanted to find out what difference that would make. Then by splitting the ransom benefits into April and October, we can do a behavioral economic analysis of the lag in benefits. For example, is it the benefit itself that affects well-being or expectation about the benefit? All experimental subjects completed all of the following questionnaires. A pre-questionnaire was conducted in March 2020 before the start of the experiment. A mid-questionnaire was conducted in September 2020. A post-questionnaire was conducted in March 2021, after the end of the experiment. And a monthly questionnaire was conducted every month during the experiment period from April 2020 to March 2021. Some of the questionnaire content follow the government survey. Others are original. Here is the content of pre, mid, post questionnaires. The content of the pre, mid, and post questionnaires are similar and is like a large-scale survey with many questions. We asked about health and mental health, as well as daily activities such as drinking, smoking, and gambling. And we asked about activities for the future, such as learning a foreign language, learning a computer and information processing, and taking cooking classes. The monthly questionnaire is a similar survey and is conducted monthly for 12 months. The following is a summary of the characteristics of the experiment. This is the only full-scale basic income experiment conducted in Japan. And it is rare in the world that the source of funds is personal assets. and the period is short. But the number of examinees is not few. And the period is from April 2020 to March 2021. The impact of coronavirus is significant. Corona has the effect of pushing down life satisfaction. And beneficiaries are randomly selected regardless of occupation, age, or gender. This means unconditional. But there is a bias that the beneficiaries are Twitter users. Benefits were divided into instruments and ransom payment. There is a lag between the notification of benefits and actual delivery of benefits. We asked, how satisfied are you with the following items related to your life? On a 5-point scale, with 1 being not at all satisfied and 5 being very satisfied. A. Area of residence. B. Leisure time. C. Family life. D. Financial situation. E. Friendship. F. Health status. G. Sport. Relationship with husband or wife. About area of residence. Green line represent the group without benefits. And orange line represent monthly. And blue line represents the ransom in April. And the pink line represents the ransom in October. The groups with benefits are more satisfied. Female are particularly satisfied with the October payment. Satisfaction in all groups decline over time. And leisure time, family life, financial situation, friendship, health status, sports. The groups with benefits are more satisfied in all categories. Female is particularly satisfied with the October payment in almost all categories. And about happiness, the group with benefits are happier, and the group with benefits in April is the happiest, but the happiness decline. The happiness of the group with benefits in October increases before the benefits are paid. The happiness of the group with monthly benefits remained unchanged. And about income, the benefits reduced men's income from work. They reduced overtime hours, but the rate of hours worked is not organized. And about the income of female. Females' income from work have not changed as much as men's. And benefits increase hours of sleep. Benefits slightly increase the amount of time males spend with their families. Benefits do not increase the amount of time females spend with their families. And benefits reduced injuries. Benefits reduce hospital visits. And benefits significantly reduce gambling. Here is the conclusion. Benefits boost various aspects of satisfaction in life. A time lag between benefit decisions and actual benefits increases satisfaction with various aspects of life, especially for female. Well-being continues to increase during the period before benefits are actually paid. Income from work decreases for male, but remains the same for female. Time spent with family increases for male, but remains the same for female. Benefits reduce stress, injuries, and hospital visits. Gambling is significantly reduced. Basic income not just a poverty measure, it has an empowering effect on people. Basic income increases well-being and satisfaction with various aspects of life and reduces stress, injury, and illness. The benefit itself, as well as the expectation of receiving the benefit, has the effect of increasing people's level of well-being. Basic income has often been assumed to be a monthly benefit until now. However, ransom transfers may have more desirable effects, such as increasing well-being. There is a risk that poor people will spend all their money at once and become We would like to clarify increase in productivity, benefits increase, income over working hours. We would like to clarify whether all items are statistically significant or not. We would like to check if there is a significant difference after adjusting for gender, age, and income. And if we get a chance to do the experiment again, we would like to do a free randomized controlled experiment. Thank you for your attention.
Very much. Really appreciate that. It was a very unique set of data that you've got from that situation, and it's wonderful to be able to see the results here at BN. Unfortunately, we've come to the end of our session and our time. So I'd just like to thank all of our presenters again for what was a really stimulating session. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference.
Yes.